It's 4 o'clock on a Monday, and you know what that means. It's time for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. Yeah, baby. This week, starring special guest star Ravi the Raviator. Welcome, Ravi.
Thank you, Michael. Good to be here.
Good to have you here. I would shake his hand, but I'm coming down with a cold and don't want to get the poor guy sick because he's flying home tonight.
Yeah.
But I've known Ravi for probably close to 10 years. Don't tell him the story about Gainesville.
I won't.
All right, thank you. It wasn't what you think. Trust me. I don't know what you're thinking, but whatever it was, it wasn't it.
That.
Yeah. Anyway, Ravi and I met on a panel at the University of Florida in Gainesville.
Yeah.
Yep, beautiful downtown Gainesville, home of the Whataburger. Very few people know that unless
I
you
didn't know that.
Yeah, I used to have a best friend that lived in Gainesville, so I went there and ate at Whataburger a lot. Anyway, I'm coming down with a cold, so I'm trying really hard not to get him sick. So no handshaking today. I sprayed his chair with Lysol before he sat in it. But Ravi is a very, very accomplished guy and an impressive young man. Not only is he a highly skilled musician, singer, songwriter, producer, all that stuff, he is also an aviator. Flies airplanes. That was a bird, actually.
Yeah.
So, being the RC plane nut that I am, that impresses the hell out of me because I know how hard it is to keep anything in the air that's not on autopilot anyway. But he speaks at conferences all over the world, and I mean the world. He's just recently done Russia, all right?
I was in Russia. Actually, NAMM
Yeah.
does a show in Russia, and Music Messe is their German counterpart.
Right.
And then about a month later, I went to Music China in Shanghai.
Wow.
And gave a lecture and performed. I performed at both of them.
Yeah.
As well.
And he's done endorsement deals. We'll talk about endorsements later, but the one that I found most fascinating was the Voyager guitars, which, if you guys don't know, they break down for traveling so that they fit in a backpack, ostensibly. And you've got a Raviator electric version.
Yeah, which basically comes down to a laptop bag. I mean, it's very compact. You know, it fits underneath the seat of a passenger plane. You know, right in front of you.
Wow. Yeah, so that big guy next to you, when he gets out, can go and step on it. Anyway, glad to see you guys here. Sorry I missed you last week. The family and I took a vacation. We went skiing, had a great time. But I thought of you Monday afternoon at 4 o'clock. We were still in the California time zone. I did think about you guys, and I actually said to my wife Sunday night when we got to the ski place, gee, honey, maybe I should do a Taxi TV from the hotel room. And she looked at me and went,
no, not going to happen.
Nope. So as much as I love her, I want to stay in love or have her stay in love with me. So I decided to actually, I only worked 4 hours all week last week, which was, that might be a record. Anyway.
Are you a workaholic?
I'm not, actually. I'm a lazy son of a bitch is what I am. I would prefer to sit home on my couch and watch Three Stooges reruns for the rest of my life. I'm fascinated by marketing. I do love business. I grew up in a family-owned business in a little farm town in the Midwest, but I'm not a workaholic. It's just this company takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
When I worked for other people, I was out the door at 6 or 7 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
But now that it's mine, I feel like I've got a responsibility to put food on the table for my family and a responsibility. Yeah, these guys, you know, it's like they show up for the show.
Yeah.
I should be prepared for them.
Well, and I assume you're somewhat passionate about it as well.
I am, and that's why the subtitle to today's show is Turn Your Passion into Profit, creating multiple streams of income from your music. And Ravi has done that.
Actually, did you know that one of the titles of my presentation is Weaving Your Passion into Profession? So similar.
I didn't know that,
concept.
but it's pretty obvious. No, I mean, come on, you have two passions: music and flying.
Yeah.
How do you earn your living?
Music and flying.
Yeah, there you go. So, and you know, there are a lot of guys in business books that say, don't try and turn your passion into a profit center because it doesn't work, because you can't see things objectively,
right.
But you've proved them wrong.
Well, yes and no. I think at some point I think it's very important, but I think at some point actually you do have to separate it and say, as much as I want to do that, there's not enough money in it. And you have to start thinking like, I got to run a business, I've got a budget, and you can't at some point you can't let your passion overtake your business sense.
Right.
So there's a turning point, but that for everybody, I think that's a different time period.
And you got your start. You had a home studio, if I
Mhm.
was reading in your bio, and you worked with the guys in the band Hanson, who were huge. I mean, like the biggest band in the world in what, the mid to late 80s?
1997,
Wow,
we were the top. Yeah, I'm not that old.
That's true. I am.
We were the top selling band in the world.
Unbelievable.
1997. Yeah.
And they just found you like in the Yellow Pages and stumbled into your
In the
studio?
Yellow Pages. No.
Uh,
No, actually, it's a
oh, yeah.
it's a
They
good
had
story.
computers in
How it happened.
97.
Barely, actually. The internet was
Yeah.
just starting. I think I had my AOL account at that point,
Yep.
my very first one. But no, it's interesting. I had this recording studio in my mother's basement, and it was the first digital recording studio in the suburbs of New York City. I had a couple of those blackface ADATs.
Love those.
Yeah, they were great. The
That and
first
a Mackie
edition.
console.
Yeah, exactly. A Mackie 8 bus and,
Yeah.
and a couple.
4 decent microphones.
And the
you could
BRC, the
Yeah.
big remote control.
you could make a record with that stuff.
You could, and I
Yeah.
did. I mean, I made many, and so I used to have all the clients from New York City, really, that didn't want to pay the expensive studio rates. They would come out to Greenwich, Connecticut, which is where I grew up, and in my mother's basement, I had this ADAT studio and my Mackie 8 bus, which is where I learned to engineer and produce on other people's stuff. It's the best way to do it, and the purpose of the studio really was for my own music, but by the network of people that I was working with and other people that would come in to play on my stuff, they would say, well, can I come in and record my record here, and so on and so forth. Well, what happened is one of those guys was a guy named Rob Mathis. And Rob Mathis was actually, he lived right around the corner from me. And he was recording his songwriter demos in my mother's basement. Well, Rob's career took off, and he became the musical director for Vanessa Williams.
Oh.
And while he was with Vanessa Williams, needless to say, he was no longer recording in Mom's basement. So I had actually lost touch with him. But I sent him a Christmas card in Christmas of, I guess, 1996. And in February of 97, somebody at Mercury Records went up to Rob and said, hey, we're looking for a guitar player for a young band that we're trying to launch. Just one gig, an industry showcase. Can you think of anybody? We would just send him a Christmas card. And he thought of me.
Nice.
And he said, oh, yeah, call this guy Robbie. Here's his phone number. And then he felt badly about it because he gave out my phone number without asking. So he called me up to warn me and said, I did something stupid. I gave out your phone number. I should have checked with you first.
To a record label.
So I said, well, who did you give
damn
it
you.
to? I said, who did you give it to? He said, I gave it to an A&R guy at Mercury Records. And I'm like, Rob, where's the problem here? But actually I did something that was very smart. I didn't know it would be so smart at the time, but I just said, since you gave out my number without asking me, could you at least give me his number? And he did.
Nice.
The guy never called me.
Wow.
Yeah. So I figured after 2 days, 3 days, I had nothing to lose.
Mm-hmm.
So I called him up. And he said to me, oh, yeah, I've been meaning to call you. I got your number here somewhere. Anyway, thanks for calling. Here's the deal. The money's terrible. It's a 1 week commitment. It's the NARM showcase in Orlando, National Association of Record Merchandisers. We're launching this new band. They're a bunch of young kids, so I don't know if you're interested, but if you are, just send me some of your music and a photo. Wanted a photo. The things that registered in my mind was young, so I had to get the youngest photo that I possibly could.
And showed up 10 years older than the photo.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is, hey, this is an opportunity to get my music on the desk of an A&R guy at a major label. So I'm not just going to send him something I'm not playing. I'm going to send him some original songs.
Nice.
Because I don't know what this band is, so I'm going to take advantage of the opportunity. So I said to him, sure, where do you want me to send it? And he said, it's the weekend. I need it kind of quick. Why don't you send it to my house? Gave me his home address. I said, well, that's only like 20 minutes from where I live. Do you want me to I can bring this over tonight?
And he said yes
He
to
said
that?
yes.
What an idiot.
So so I thought, great, this is the opportunity
Not
to
only
shake
were
the
you-
hand of
Yeah.
a major label.
But
A&R
now
guy.
you're a stalker. 20
little,
minute away.
little
song.
did he know.
Yeah.
And so I drove over there, probably that night, maybe it was the next day, but I drove over there. It was a weekend, and just stood in his doorway, shook his hand, gave him the stuff that he wanted. And sure enough, a couple days later, he called me back, said, yeah, okay, so here's the deal. It's this gig in Florida. We're going to do 6 days of rehearsal in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That's where the band's from. So this is the schedule and all that stuff. Are you in? I said, yeah, I'm in. And I remember saying, is there a contract or anything? And he was, because I was always brought up by my guitar teacher to always put everything in writing.
Right.
You know, when I was in junior high school and I played field day, I went to the teacher leader with a one-page contract. I really did, and I have never played a gig without a contract ever, not
So
once.
did he? I mean, what was his answer?
So his
Just
answer
invoice
was like,
me?
yeah. Well, his answer was, "What do you want? Do you want me to send you a letter or something?" I said, "Yeah, that'd be great. Just
Yeah.
send me a letter of intention. That'd be fine." And that's exactly what he did. I don't think he'd ever done it before. This is a guy from Mercury Records, but he did it.
It didn't happen to be Clyde Lieberman.
No.
Okay.
No. And so I went and I did this one gig, and at the time I had students. I had the recording studio. I was teaching maybe
How old were you?
40 students. At that time, I was 23, 24.
Okay.
And I went. I met what we all now know as Hanson. And I did that gig with them, and that was it. And I went home, went back to my teaching, went back to my studio. A month later, I get a phone call from the same guy at Mercury Records. He said, "What are you doing on May 6th?" I said, "I don't know what's going on." He said, "Well, would you be free to play the David Letterman show?" Figured I could
Let
probably
me
work this
think.
one out.
Yeah.
Rustle the papers a little bit, make myself sound like I can move Johnny's lesson. So, so I said yes. And that weekend we did Letterman, we did Rosie O'Donnell, and we did Today Show live from Rockefeller Center.
Had the record just come out and it was starting to
That was
break
the
a radio?
launch of MMMBop. Yeah, exactly. So the MMMBop actually came out in April, and the Middle of Nowhere album was coming out that weekend in May. So we hit everything hard. Then, 2 months later, 3 months later, we were the top-selling band in the world. We did a long-form video from the Beacon Theater, live film, and then a Christmas album afterwards, and a live album.
Toured all over the world with that.
Yeah, I mean, it was big. It was big globally. Although it was because it's so fascinating because they were young, their child labor laws, all sorts of things that you don't really think about on the road that make the road very expensive. But this was just an amazing experience, a huge media experience. We did a lot of television shows, Today Show, Good Morning America, Jay Leno, David Letterman, Saturday Night Live with Jack Nicholson was the host with Helen Hunt. They were promoting As Good as It Gets.
Oh, which is a great movie.
Yeah, it was a great movie. It was a great experience. And then we ended that year with Bill Clinton's Christmas party at the White House.
Wow.
Phenomenal. I mean,
did you meet any girls? Sorry, had to throw that out there.
They were mostly 13. Let's put that out there first.
Chelsea and her friends.
But
There
were a lot of vicious single moms that were out on the road too.
Really?
Oh yeah. The ones
So-
rocking the tour buses, all the things that you see in the movies that happened to us. But it was mostly the moms.
So they were cougars before the word cougar was
Existed,
even
exactly.
part of the lexicon. Nice.
Right.
All right. So
But it really was like the Harvard Business School of rock and roll. I learned, sitting in the green rooms with people like Danny Goldberg, talking about Nirvana, talking about why the Spice Girls blew up, and I mean,
Danny Goldberg went on to, he was already one of the biggest record executives in the industry.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, he discovered Nirvana.
Yeah.
And then he discovered Spice Girls, and then he discovered Hanson, and then he, now he's doing all sorts of amazing things, politics and everything. But to be able to just sit in a room like this, with Danny Goldberg, and say, "So tell me the story of how that all happened." I mean, the best education anybody could ever ask for.
And he was, I think I shook his hand once, but allegedly a very nice guy.
Very
Because,
nice
I
guy.
mean, who are you? You're a guitar player in a band,
Yeah.
So, but the fact that he took the time says a lot.
Yes, but we were Mercury's first #1 for
A very
many
long
years,
time.
and a huge cash cow.
Who was the A&R guy? Ed Eckstein?
Steve Greenberg,
Oh, gosh.
who went on to run Columbia
Right.
afterwards, and then he started S Curve,
Yeah,
and that's when Danny went to Artemis.
right.
Because, of course, this was 1997. What happened in '99? All the labels imploded.
Yeah.
Everything just disappeared. Mercury disappeared. Polygram disappeared. I mean, it was a weird time. And Hanson disappeared pretty much from the map. As part of it.
I bet they can still draw a crowd.
Oh yeah. They can.
I want to do our song listing. I totally forgot to do that at the top of the show because, as you can see, Ravi and I can get carried away. We have a lot to talk about, and we will. So let's listen to this week's song, which producer Sophia picked from her stash of stuff that came in today. And this song is called Fuzzy by Larry Frame. Hey, you're a singer-songwriter and producer. You want to chime in, make
Yeah, I'd be
notes
happy to.
and comments? So, all right, here we go, folks. Fuzzy by Larry Frame. I said Fuzzy by Larry Frame.
I think that your reasons for leaving are sorry. No excuse for truthful confessions, darling. You're seeing blurry eyes, how a fuzzy unwell under a spell with this fake farewell. Google your symptoms, I'm sure there's a vaccine. You can't be the only person with a craving to wanna leave their hometown to see the rest of the world. A fuzzy unwell with this fake farewell. I'm not gonna let you get away from me. I never ever ever leave you in the dark. Who could blame a heart that's beating? When you said you were leaving, my heart hit the ceiling. I guess that we all have our own ways of grieving. You're seeing blurry eyes, how a fuzzy unwell under a spell with this fake fear. I'm not gonna let you get away from me. I never ever ever leave you in the dark. But who could blame a heart that's beating? 'Cause they don't know you. They don't love you like I do.
When did Dave Grohl get there?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna let you get away from me. I never ever leave you in the dark. Who could blame a heart that's beating?
Yay! That was the end. Good surprise ending. And a surprise beginning, too. You get a free surprise beginning with every play. Um, I was torn. Was it pop punk or pop rock?
I don't know. Categories are always complicated.
Yeah, and it's like falling between the two. How about you guys? What'd you think? Pop rock or pop punk? Takes a couple seconds. We have a little delay.
Mhm.
Uh,
I mean,
everybody's-
it definitely had it's definitely got a rock thing going
yeah.
for it, for sure.
I made a comment to Ravi towards the end after the bridge when the guitars came back in, which I thought that when the bridge came in, I went, oh, it was kind of like putting the brakes on. You're
Mhm.
speeding around a racetrack and you come to a skidding stop, but then he came out of it so big that he saved it.
Yeah.
And I said, God, when did Dave Grohl get here? Because it's very Dave Grohl-esque, the
But it kind of took us to the production of it, took us to some unexpected places.
Yeah,
And that's really cool.
Yeah.
Because it keeps you engaged. It grew. It grew.
it did. Absolutely.
Like I think every good song should.
Pop punk. Yeah, I should say nice job, Larry. Overall, really, really good. I saw somebody mention that it's dated. And at one point early on in the song, I thought it was a little dated, but then I was wrestling with, is it the song itself that's dated? Is it the production that's dated? And actually, I came to the conclusion somewhere around here that the lyrics kind of make it feel dated.
I agree completely.
And
Yeah.
it's because the song comes across as very personal. I know you know this girl. You were deeply in love with this girl, and she said, "See you later, sucker. I am out of here, and I'm throwing a backpack on, and I'm moving out of town." And it hurt you. So you wrote this song, and it's angry in a good way. I love the anger in it. And, you know, if I had to give it a number, and I hate to give things grades or numbers or anything, but you know, this is like a 7.8 to an 8.3, somewhere in there. It's got a lot of good stuff going on, and some things you could do to make it even better would be the lyrics, the vocal needs to come up a little bit. Sometimes I had to search without the lyric sheet. I wouldn't have known what was going on.
Yeah.
Love the guitar work. Ravi, you're a great guitar player. How did you feel about the guitars? Any ideas or thoughts?
No, I thought they were used in a powerful way,
Mhm.
which is, you know, the best use for a heavy guitar, right?
Yeah.
Is to drive energy and power, and I really did like that whole aspect of it. I had a bit of a hard time with the story, in just really getting the story and
Right.
understanding it. Even like the concept of a fake farewell, I don't feel like I understand exactly what that means in the context of the song. I mean, I can sort of figure it out,
Yeah.
but maybe it should be a little bit easier in terms of the
Right,
storytelling.
it's
You know what I mean?
personal.
Yeah.
He felt like it was a fake farewell because she was using it as an excuse to get out of the relationship. I
Right.
think that's what you mean or meant. I had underlined it on the lyric sheet before you even showed up today. I was looking at the lyric sheet, going fake farewell, fake farewell, fake farewell, because I noticed it, and then I realized, you know what? That's the last line of the chorus every time. The song should be called "Fake Farewell" instead of "Fuzzy,"
Fuzzy.
because the word "fuzzy," I believe, is only in the song once or twice.
Yeah,
Right, a
it's the
fuzzy
second line
unwell,
of the,
right.
of the hook.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe it's in there 3 times. Anyway, "Fake Farewell" works a little better, I think, is the chorus
See,
or is the title.
fuzzy means confused, right, to some degree.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, the singer here, just if it's fuzzy, he hasn't quite yet figured out what's
Yeah.
going on. So therefore, the listener hasn't either.
Right.
It's a bit unresolved, and I'm not sure that I was pulled in enough to feel unsatisfied about a lack of resolution, because the lack of satisfaction about a lack of resolution can be very engaging
Mhm.
if the song pulls you in enough.
Right. You,
You know
want
what
to
I mean?
know more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm not
Tell
sure.
me the rest
I'm
of the
not
story.
sure I got there.
Yeah. He
But-
did it musically, like
Yeah,
with,
oh,
with the
absolutely.
abrupt ending and coming out of the, you know, the slamming on the brakes and the bridge and coming out so in your face. Musically, you got a lot of stuff right. Lyrically, I think that your reasons for leaving are sorry. No excuse for truthful confessions, darling. No excuse for truthful confessions. Its rhyme scheme is kind of cool, but it's too hard for my simple little brain to figure out.
You know, there's something else that bothered me, and again, so much of this is personal. You know,
Right.
It's subjective.
Except
and
we're
it is-
always right because the camera's pointing
But
at us.
yeah, other than that, minor fact. Like this line, "person with a craving." The way he divided the word "person" in
Mhm.
that line is something that, and again, it's not a right or wrong issue. Maybe it's more of a taste issue, but it's something I try to avoid. I try to make my phrasing very similar to the natural way somebody would talk,
Mm.
because, in my opinion, it makes you a better communicator if you're communicating in a way that the audience is expecting to recognize it or
Right.
hear it. Just whether it was
That's why
speaking, whether it
song
was singing.
structure works because
Yeah.
people know when the bridge is going to come typically.
Right.
Yeah.
So just the phrasing and the use of a word and where you put the syllables in something like that that was the first thing that really jumped out at me.
I would present a possible counter argument to that,
Uh-huh.
which is the kids today are phrasing stuff off the beats. And that's become a more modern technique, and I actually like that. I think it was person with the I can't sing it, but
you're right.
but
That's
it
what
was person. To me, it added to the punkness of the song,
Yeah.
and I actually liked it.
I liked it in that he repeated, let's call it awkward phrasing for lack of a better term, in a couple of other places. And it's almost like the old adage, you know, if you do it once, it's a mistake. If you do it twice,
It's by intent.
it's by intent. So by the time we got through it, I sort of felt like, yeah, okay, there's a theme here, there's a pattern here, there's a style. So
Right.
That's what it is. There's a style here. But it threw me off at first.
You know, my favorite line in the whole thing was, Larry, Google your symptoms. That was great. And that actually rescued it a bit from sounding dated because you had a modern
Right.
reference in there. Google your symptoms. So it's kind of pop punk with the attitude. You're angry at her, but you're also so obviously hurt that it takes away from the rockiness, the punkiness of it. It's a little bit too personal, too much of a love story. And you could probably make arguments, rattle off half a dozen, Ramon songs or something that had a girl's name in it or a personal story. But that's just my opinion, and I'm sticking with it. Um, but you're well on your way with it. I would go back and look at the lyrics again and try and make it a story that's more universal, that more people can understand. You understand it because you were there. It's your life you're talking about. So how can you make it so a couple of simpletons like us
A
can
unique story with a universal truth.
Yes.
I think the unique story is pretty good, but the universal truth is not strong enough to make the unique story work.
He's right. I completely agree. So how do you make it relatable? Something, because we've all had a breakup. So how do you make that more universal for the rest of us to feel what you felt? But I do love Google your symptoms.
Yeah.
You're the only guy in the world that ever used Google your symptoms. Anyway, good job. Thank you for sending that in. And now let us move on to the next phase of the show, which is creating multiple streams of income from your music. And it's funny because did we already talk about this on camera or was it off camera? Yeah, we did.
At the beginning,
Turn your
yeah.
passion into profit. So I've got a bunch of bullet points here. Playing live shows. How do you make that profitable if you've already got a day gig? Who's going to book the shows? What sort of press pack or EPK? Business plan? How do you pull that off?
Well, you sleep later.
You can't because you've got a day job.
No, I mean like in 10 years you sleep.
Oh,
you
you
can't
sleep later.
Later in
Got
life.
it. Got it.
Yeah. I give a lot of lectures on various different subjects, and I think the most important way to set it up is to say none of it's easy. It's just not. It's work.
People hate to work.
People hate to. I love to work though, and I think that's why I get it done. So there's no easy way to say, if you've got a day job, you just got to find somebody else to do it, or you get your friends, your street team. I don't know. I've never done that. I've never really believed in it. I think it's good, but who's going to work for 10% of what I make is the first question I always ask myself.
And get it right.
Yeah, and get it right, exactly. So I've got to figure out a way to make more before I can outsource that component, whether it's my publicity, whether it's my agent, booking. So I don't know how do you do it you do it at night, you do it on the weekend, you do it every possible moment that you can without the day job. My thing has been I've never had quote unquote a day job.
Right.
I always, I started teaching guitar as soon as I realized that as long as I stayed one page ahead of my best student, I'd be good.
Ever heard the joke about the two guys camping in the woods and they see a bear and one guy he's tying his shoes and the other guy goes, "What the hell are you doing? Putting your boots on now." And we've got to outrun the bear. And the guy looks at him and goes, "No, I don't. I just need to outrun you."
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, right.
That's the only joke I ever remembered in my whole
Well,
life.
that's a good one. If you're going to remember one, that's a good one. No, I think that's, but I think that's the point. There is no shortcut. It takes a high level of commitment. You have to pay your bills. You have to meet your responsibilities. And you have to do the best that you can to pursue your passion and live your dreams.
So, in other words, they're the ones that have to find the clubs that have original music. And do you recommend sending out an electronic press kit or a paper press kit with a CD? Reaching out to those clubs. How should they do it? How often should they do it? How many should they reach out to at a time? What results can they expect?
The way that I do things and the way I've always done things is if there's a club I want to play, I'll go there to the club the night that there's a band that somewhat sounds like what I do. And I'll go there and I'll meet with the band and I'll meet the club owner. And I'll say, I'm a very similar act to something like this. I'd love to talk to you about this to see how I can also help bring in more business. Every conversation starts with, what can I do for you?
Right. What's in it for me?
Yeah. I mean,
Them.
exactly. Yeah. And it's sincere. I mean, that's not strategy. That's just good business.
Yeah, that's in your genetic makeup. I know you well enough to know that. And one of the reasons we bonded when we met is we're both passionate readers of business books, and that's marketing concept number one is, what's in it for me, the person reading the ad or seeing the pitch. So once you figure out,
And it's the personal connection. I mean, that's really what it is. With everybody I've worked with, meaning club owners, talent buyers, whoever it is, they first like me, just
Mhm.
because I try to be a nice guy, and I try to.
you have to work at that. Huh?
I try. I work very hard. But I try to pull it off. But no, but really, and be a sincere person and be a good person. It all sounds so cliche, but it's
Yeah,
just so true.
it's common sense.
It's just common sense. And when people like you, they take a risk with you.
Right.
They want you to succeed. They want to do what they can to help you succeed.
And if they like you and you present well, then it feels like you're going to make their life easy. You're going to sell more beer for them.
Yeah.
And I've got yet one more act I can rely on to put butts in chairs.
Right. And I've never looked at any club owner or any talent buyer as my employer or even as my client. I look at everybody as my partner.
Mhm.
We're all on the same side of this. So how do we make this the most beneficial partnership that we can possibly do? And it's all about long term too. I'm not interested in one gig. I'm interested in gigs for years, a relationship. And so I approach everything that way. And frankly, if I don't like the person, then maybe I'll look for another place, because it is about the relationship. And one can invest as much time and energy into A, B, or C.
Right.
So why not choose the one in which you'll be happiest and in which you can possibly get the best results from?
And then just multiply that.
Yeah,
if
exactly.
if it works that way at one club, find five more that
Are like that.
Yeah.
That have that mindset, that have that same sense of integrity and values and whatever.
Any difference between booking a band and I know my audience fairly well. We've got a lot of regulars that show up every week, and I would say we've got a lot of middle-aged to baby boomer generation people that are singer-songwriter types. Anything different for them versus booking a band? Because I'm guessing they're going to do more coffee house type stuff or quieter venues, more intimate venues. Excuse me, same rules apply?
I think so. Yeah, I absolutely. I mean, I do believe that all business to a large degree are relationship business. So whatever your product is, whether it's band, whether it's your solo singer songwriter, I think the process is the same. But the venues, sure, the venues are going to be different.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to, as a solo singer or songwriter, you're going to go play a rock band club. I mean, it would be a bad fit, and that's important. That's an important thing to recognize as well. As it's not just about finding the room that you're going to play. It's about finding the right room that you're going to play, the one that also draws in its own clientele. I think that's always important. Rooms have a following too.
Right.
But Bitter End in New York has a following.
Yeah.
And so you associate yourself. Again, you put this in a very business-oriented way. This is a brand association. Your brand as an artist is associated with a brand as a club, and when everything is unified, things happen. Things work.
What about the number one thing I'm going to hear after this show? I'm going to get emails from people say, yeah, the original clubs in my area, it's pay for play. If I don't guarantee so many butts and chairs.
Yep.
Personally, I understand that. And people say, oh, taxis pay for play, which it's not. We don't force you to do that. I mean, you don't have to become a member. We're just doing some of the work, a lot of the work for you to bring the opportunities to your door. Well, the club is bearing the expense of the insurance, the employees, all the things that go into making that venue stay open for you to use as a platform to get your music out there. And they've got to know that if you're going to play on their stage, that you're going to have more than 6 people in the audience. I don't think an unreasonable minimum to hit is an unreasonable request. Is that something they should expect, that they're going to find a pay-for-play situation almost anywhere they go?
No, I don't think so.
That's good to know.
I think that's much more the case here in LA. It's the case in Paris, where I spend half of my life. It's less so the case in New York, but it exists.
Mm-hmm.
But there are many other secondary markets, second-tier cities that one can still play for the door.
Right.
And even that's not necessarily great. I mean, I as an artist and somebody that's performed for a long time, always demanded a guarantee.
Right.
I mean, I felt I was entitled to that. I'd worked hard, I'd practiced, I'd put all this together. But, you know, had I not, I would have played much more often, would have used that opportunity to develop my performance skills at a faster rate. And I think that's the way you have to look at some of this stuff. Is if you're not the big rock star, but you want to be the big rock star, there is a process, there is a learning process that you have to go through.
Yes, doing anything 10,000 times, you're going to get
well,
better.
Right, but yes, that and just the fact that you know, you pay for your education. And that is part of the education. The club scene is not necessarily, and it can be for the local musician, it can be the end all, in which case it's a different business model. But for maybe a younger person who's got big vision, then maybe it's a different process. You're paying for your education as you go through it. Do you have to pay to play? In some cases you might. Paying to play, you know, use taxi as the model, you know, where somebody has to pay you guys to do something. Wait a second, why should we have to pay you for a service?
Does your accountant work for free?
Exactly.
Does
right.
your dentist work
so
for
we
free?
as artists have to kind of get out of this entitled mentality and recognize, hey, I'm one of them, and I've had plenty of. I've had an entitled mentality myself.
Really?
Things. Yeah, of course.
You
There's
of all
some things-
people, you.
I grew out of it, but there were times, especially, you know, post Hanson, where I felt like, you know,
Right.
this is what I'm worth, and this is what I deserve, and I'm going to hold out for it.
Interesting.
Oh, absolutely. And
But you'd
sometimes-
had some success versus people who feel entitled, who've
At
had
the-
nothing,
yeah.
yet they feel entitled that the world should come to them.
And why?
Yeah,
Just because they're an artist.
Right. But
Right.
you earned at least some
Yeah.
bit of that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So there are tiers, there are different levels, but I think, you know, arts in this way is a business. And in business, you pay to advertise. You
Right.
pay for services. You pay for things. It's not called expense, it's called investment.
Yeah.
And taxi is an investment. My Facebook advertising is an investment. All these things are what I do as a business, investing in the growth of my business.
Okay, then let's talk about the balance of business and creative. I was going to get to that later in the show, but let's talk about it now.
But here we are.
Yeah. So many people say, look, I am a creative type person. Can't I just make the music and have somebody else figure out what to do with it and get it out there for me? Can you succeed in today's market by just being that creative person, or do you need to have a business side to yourself?
I think the answer is yes, you can succeed, but the odds are stacked way against you.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that you can't.
We're talking before the
But it's a
show
little more of a
that
lottery.
you're doing, it's funny, people use the lottery word about taxi all the time. It's a lottery. Really? In the lottery, you don't get to make a better submission. You don't get to make the right submission. There are all these things you can do to increase the probability
Exactly.
of success. You can't do that really with the lottery.
That's right.
I've read a couple books on trying to do that with the lottery. You really
That's
can't.
right. And that's sort of the difference of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes, you can say, hey, I'm talented and I'm going to sit around and wait for somebody to find me. Okay, but that is a bit of a lottery.
I'm going to sit on the edge of my bed doing guitar tabs until Danny Goldberg or Clive Davis show up and say, you're freaking amazing. Did I make that? Did I finish that point? What were we just talking about? The creative and the business head. Okay, so yeah, so we talked about that. Now let's go on to producing other artists. And I know that this is something that many, many people who are taxi members, and probably a lot of them that watch the show on a regular basis, do. These are people that have set up home studios.
Right.
They've become very good at engineering, and they've learned how to produce. Maybe they've learned how by hanging out in forums. They've learned how by listening to other people's records. They watch, what's his name, Dave Pensato, and they wrap it all up, and now they're a producer. How did you turn that into an income stream for yourself, going from the home studio in your mom's basement into an income stream?
Well, really, that was the income stream. I mean, you know, my goal in junior high school and high school was to be a recording engineer. That was what intrigued me. And I started, growing up in the suburbs of New York City, I started going into all the studios on 48th Street
Right.
and hanging out and watching the masters.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, we're talking $400 or $500 an hour, 2-inch tape.
Power Station? Is that one of the
Amazing.
rooms?
Well, A&R is where I went the most. Is where I
Okay,
knew
yeah.
people. But Power Station, and these guys, I mean, so much money was being spent, put on 2 tape, and then an engineer would take a razor blade and start chopping that tape.
Yep.
And it was magic, right? There's no undo.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's splicing tape, but it's not the same thing as the undo button that you have in Pro Tools or
Right.
anything like that. And
You can always you
you
take
can-
it back
You
together.
can tape it back together, but there were some things going on there. There was vision. There was commitment.
Mhm.
There were a lot of things that we don't have in today's production world because we don't need to. We can undo stuff.
Right.
And so it was interesting, and that's really where I learned what professionalism was. And I took that back into my mother's basement and the ADATs, and took that not so much skill, but level of commitment into
Wow.
every aspect of what I would do, and that's why people came there to record.
I'm
And good
so
people.
glad that you brought that up. I learned it at the feet of the masters at Criteria Studios in Miami in the mid 70s, and there is no other word that sums up the totality of my experience of what I learned there other than professionalism.
Yeah.
Everything from make sure the ashtrays are empty, that matters to people,
Mm-hmm.
to the cables are wrapped, to your attitude, to keeping your mouth shut, your eyes and your ears open. Anticipation. Oh my God, anticipation. If there's any gift that I've given to my 4 daughters that I am most proud of, it's teaching them to anticipate.
Mhm.
Everything you can anticipate in life. And I learned all that in the control room.
Mm.
When the producer does this, hand them, back in my day, it was hand them a lighter, a razor blade, a grease pencil, and a pen.
Yeah.
Because they needed one of those things.
Right.
And the razor blade wasn't for cutting 2-inch tape back then.
Exactly.
Sadly.
I thought you were going there. And there were times, it's funny because I think of those times in the studios where I was just, great, Paul Schaefer's of the world, everybody coming in and out there all the time.
Yeah.
The cream of the crop, and that's where I became friends with Will Lee many years ago, and then again on the Letterman Show, we've written songs together since, and it's that level of professionalism that just captivated me, the commitment
Yeah.
of that. And you mentioned anticipation. One of the other sides of that I learned from watching these producers is knowing when to move on. You're not going to get it,
Right.
so pay the guy, even though he's the best in the world. It didn't work.
Yeah.
And move on. And when you're working in budgets, when you're working at $400 an hour in those studios, and when you've got all these people, and you are forced to
Commit and move
commit
on.
and move
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
And it's such a valuable lesson that I think most people don't. With our home studios, everybody's got a studio in unlimited time.
Yeah.
And stuff doesn't get done.
You could have 48 tracks of drums now. Back in my day, we had
Yeah.
kick, snare, drums left, and drums right.
Yeah.
And you committed to the ratio, the level or the balance of cymbals and tom-toms on drums left and drums right.
Right.
And you had to be good
You
enough
had
to
to
get
in
that
order to
right.
pare it down to a stereo track.
Yeah.
Absolutely, you had to, and that is, in my opinion, a mindset, an attitude, and a skill set that ultimately brought me business into my little recording studio, and I made a lot more money. This is why I never had a day job. Is at 16, 17 years old
Wow.
in high school, I had this digital studio. I had 20 private students. I was doing sessions in the morning, lessons in the afternoon, and when I graduated high school and went to NYU just for a short amount of time, I went to NYU primarily because I didn't want to go too far from the studio. I had a growing business, so I would come back during the week. I would come back on every weekend and continue that momentum. What threw it all off was Hanson,
Right.
because then I went on the road for a while.
And you can't run a studio from the
You
road.
can't run a studio.
Well, nowadays you can, but
gave away all my students. We can't run a studio business,
right.
and gave away all my students, and fell in love with the road. And I haven't left since.
Now this guy
200
travels,
200 days a year for the last, I don't know, 6 years, 5 years. That kind of schedule, and prior to that, 150, and then 2008, the economy tanked. It was only 75, and that's when my wife turned to me and said, you've always wanted to learn to fly an airplane. You've got time now. And that's when I got into aviation.
Wow.
But anyway,
Either that or she wanted to get rid of you.
Well, I wasn't gonna go there, but that's quite maybe a possibility.
I told Robbie before the show started, as you guys know, I love flying RC planes, although I have no burning desire to fly real planes. I've been at the controls of friends' planes before, but I have no burning desire. For the holidays, one of my friends got me the official FAA book. This is what you get when you start taking flying lessons. And now I'm more scared of flying a plane than I ever was before because there's so many things that can go wrong. At the road rally, I said to Ravi, when you're sitting at the controls of a real plane, you want to go left, you go left. You want to go right, you go right. With a remote control plane, it's inverted.
Yeah.
And what if you're flying at a 45-degree angle to yourself, either direction? So you have all these perspective relationship things that you have to get used to, and that becomes a muscle memory thing with your two thumbs. But in a real plane, there are so many things you need to know about physics and understand the flight envelope and all the physics that surround that.
Center
Because
of gravity and all this.
yeah, you put one suitcase too many in the back of that Cessna 172, and you're screwed
Yeah.
on takeoff.
You die.
Yeah, you make you're at a high altitude and you make a turn that's too steep. There's not enough air to support.
To go over the wings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you die. Well, you're on your way to dying. If
Yeah.
you're really good, you pull yourself out of that one.
Right.
maybe.
And generally you do.
Yeah.
I mean, most accidents are not equipment failures. It's pilot failure.
Yeah.
Usually due to panic, usually due to those types of things or inadequate training, like anything in life, though. But it's commitment. It all comes back to commitment. The great saying in aviation is that you can decide whether or not you're going to take off. You can't decide whether or not you're going to land. So, so you're making commitment before you go anywhere. And I think I feel that way in the studio. I go into the studio. I've got a vision for what I want to do. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to veer off my flight path or maybe go somewhere else,
Right.
And take the more scenic route if I want to. But I've got a vision. I at least know what my musical goal is with this recording. And I think that's what makes a good producer. I think that's what makes good music.
So let's talk about marketing. The taxi members, and I know many of them that have become really, really good, and they take work from other taxi members. They meet them on the forum. They meet them here in the chat room on Taxi TV. They meet them at the road rally. And it starts out usually as one person has a track and needs a guitar solo. So then they send the file to you in another state, another city, and you put the solo on, and they talk back and forth on Skype or the telephone or email. And yes, now I've got the solo I want. And then the guy who originally did the track realizes this person has a really good ear for production. So now they become co-producers. A relationship starts. And at some point, it could be that you, the guy that I went to originally for the guitar solo, now is the engineer producer of my stuff because you're that much better than I am at it. How do they expand beyond that and bring in new clients? It used to be only local. I mentioned the Yellow Pages earlier. If back in the day you needed a studio, you looked in the Yellow Pages or the local musicians rag, or maybe you put up a 3x5 index card of the bulletin board on the bulletin board at your local music store. They can go global now.
You mean in terms of sourcing clients?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how can somebody who is good enough to work with other taxi members and make them happy on a regular basis, how can they go global sourcing clients for their production skills and studio business?
I wish I had the answer for that.
But there are a myriad of ways.
There are. And I think the key is you have to identify your niche market. Because when you go global,
even national. Maybe
but whatever it is, the bigger you get, the more defined you need your niche to be.
So you stick out to the people who need you most.
Exactly, and there's enough of them. That's the thing,
Right.
And that's what a lot of people, including myself, failed to realize for a long time. You want to be this all things to all people. You think like, if I don't offer that, I still go through this struggle. If you don't offer that, then you're going to lose out on all those clients. But you're right. The world is now your potential client.
Yeah.
So you just need the tiniest little slice of it to become a multimillionaire. Through your music. Really, it's math, right? So you have to find your niche. And oddly enough for me, my niche has become, and this is, not just producing, but in performing and everything, is that intersection of my two passions. I perform at air shows. I write songs for air shows, for air show performers. That's my niche.
Do you ever cover Up, Up, and Away by the Fifth Dimension?
I haven't. But that is it's a component of what I do.
Yeah.
But it's
You've
that's
become
fine.
like the go-to guy for keynotes, right?
Well, for keynote, I mean, I do a lot of speaking there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really become
In
the
the
main thing.
aviation business,
In the
though, I
aviation
mean, for
business.
you, a musician guy to become like a go-to keynote speaker in the aviation
Well,
business.
and it
big
sounds
deal.
odd, doesn't it?
Yeah,
but,
it does.
But listen to the pathway. I mean, it's kind of interesting. I go in there, I learn to fly airplanes. I'm everybody around me is older and with white hair, and I sort of start looking into this industry and realize there's a shrinking pilot population, and it's older, and we don't have enough young people going in. My history, ever since Hanson, has been dealing with young people. I've known how to connect with youth, and so I became the bridge, if you will, for the aviation industry to reach the millennials and to reach
Nice.
the next generation. It was again a niche, and
Do
I was
you
the
remember
only.
the moment where you realized that went, I got it?
Yeah, it was very. I was still a student pilot actually.
Wow.
It was before I had my license. I gave my first aviation lecture, and it's because I realized that the aviation industry wasn't communicating with people like me and younger to make us want to do this. It became a customer service issue. It became attracting a student issue. So I realized that as a student, I've been writing magazine articles for music magazines for a while. So I called up the biggest aviation rag and I said, "Hey, I've got an idea." It was the exact same article I've been writing in the music industry for so long. The verbs were all the same. I just switched all the nouns.
Wow, brilliant.
And that led into a very busy speaking career, partly because, and very profitable one, partly because companies started to sponsor me because a shrinking pilot population is a shrinking customer population.
Why is the pilot population shrinking? Because baby boomers represented X number and they're dying off?
They're dying off. I mean, probably very unusual taxi TV conversation, but
Yeah.
but it is interesting. You know, all the pilots are retiring. Most of them came out of the Vietnam War. They're now hitting 65. So that's all going in the airlines. The airlines are then recruiting them from the regional airlines. The regional airlines are taking the flight instructors, and then no flight instructors to teach new students.
Do you know, at my airfield that I go to every weekend to fly my remote control plane, I would say 50% of the people who fly there are Vietnam
Yeah.
era retired pilots.
So this is the issue that we have. What's a great way to reach young people? Music. Who's the music guy in the aviation industry? The Raviator, right? That's my call sign. Companies like Sennheiser, who I've been working with forever as an endorsing artist,
On a music level.
music level.
Right.
They make aviation headsets.
Yep. You
And-
never get in a plane without seeing those.
That's right. And nobody in the general aviation market really knows the name Sennheiser. So Sennheiser saw an opportunity in me to bring their music industry credibility into the aviation market.
Nice.
So they became, and still are today, my biggest sponsor in aviation. Yet we all know Sennheiser's microphones and your monitors. Then that translated to some research that I stumbled across. 49.7% of pilots play a musical instrument.
Really?
Yeah.
Because mathematical heads,
It may be that. It also may be create the search for a middle brain, because one is kind of left brain, the other is kind of right brain. One is very Republican, the other is very Democratic. So there's this sort of balance. One is very rigid with rules, the other is rock and roll.
Right.
So there's
Interesting.
I think it's the difference.
because in general population, it's like 11% or something, much
8%.
smaller.
It's
Okay,
8%.
yeah.
8% of the general population, 49.7% in the aviation market, which got me thinking about my music sponsors, target market,
Yeah.
right, for the aviation. Roughly 60% of musicians play guitar. So that means that there are 180,000 guitar players in America that can't fit their guitar into an airplane. Hence the Voyager Raviator folding guitar.
It all makes sense.
It does. So it all makes sense when you see it, and it's not like I saw all this. It was through the process, just constantly being aware, which is
Right.
what aviation teaches you better than anything else, is awareness. Seeing those opportunities, not any different than asking my friend Rob for the phone number of the guy at.
Right.
It's the
At the
same
record label.
mentality,
Yeah.
just repeating itself.
You never
over
get
and
what
over
you
and
don't
over.
ask for. You just have to learn how to ask.
Right. And so I asked the Aviation Magazine if I could do that. I asked the world's largest air show if I could come and speak and start to gain that credibility. And now, out of my 200 days a year on the road, 70% of it, and I want to shift this back, but 70% of it is speaking.
Yeah.
And more than half of my speaking now is in aviation. Still, a lot of it is, Berkeley College of Music. I do stuff up there all the time. NAM, I was here for
Right.
NAM. And it was a great NAM show this year too, and I gave a couple lectures there. It was good. So that aspect keeps me very busy, but it all feeds everything, and I think that's the most important thing for people to recognize is Yes. Let's get back to your question. Yes, could I sit back, be great at my instrument, be great songwriter, and hope that somebody discovers me? Yes. Can it happen? Yeah. But you got to stack the odds in your favor.
Mm-hmm.
You got to go out there and meet people. You got to go out there and wear your talents on your sleeve, and your passion on your sleeve, because when people can recognize both, that you're not only talented, but you're passionate and just a good person. It goes back to what we said at the very beginning. They want to help you.
You know Derek Sivers, right?
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay, so we're both friends with Derek. I remember when he still lived here in LA, we would go out to dinner, I don't know, a couple times a year or whatever. And one time I asked him, what's the biggest selling CD on CD Baby? Back when it was almost all physical product. It was a woman that had a CD for equestrians, people who love horses. You would expect it to be a really cool singer-songwriter or a great band, but no, it was a person that had done a CD of songs, original songs about her love of horses and
Mhm.
riding,
Mhm.
because she identified a niche, and
Yeah.
she knew how to speak to that niche.
Yeah.
It's like you and the pilots.
Absolutely. It's so important. The niche marketing is so important.
Um, let's talk about sponsorships. Can a musician really create any serious income from sponsorships? And well, we've already talked about how to target good sponsors, I think, by your example.
Yeah.
Actually, we've covered a lot of this, how to approach them, what's in it for them.
Them being who? The sponsor?
The sponsors.
Mhm.
I get calls from people, I'd say 3 times a week. From I'm doing a music event. It's an inaugural event in Indianapolis, and we would love Taxi to sponsor it.
Hmm.
And I always say to them, first of all, what do you think your audience size is going to be, and what's in it for me?
Right.
And they can never answer that
Yeah.
question.
Well,
Exposure.
yeah, yeah, which musicians have heard so often,
Yes.
so they're ready to. But yes, exposure is. But how do you quantify it?
Right.
And that's the key thing.
Yeah, because you're going to pay a dollar amount. I want to know what I'm getting for my buck.
Exactly. So I can give you a couple of examples of things that I've done. One time I was when I was living in New Orleans and I had my band up there. I wanted to go up to Connecticut and do a festival up in Connecticut. And I was thinking, well, okay, the festival was going to offer me, I think, $500 to come up and play.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted more than that. I wanted at least 1,000 or 25. I don't remember quite what the numbers were. But what I said to the festival directors, I said, okay, how about this? If I can get a sponsor, will you allow me to associate the sponsor's name everywhere where you print my name? Now, I knew that maybe only 1,000 people would come and see me at this festival, but I knew 300,000 were going there over the weekend. So if I could get barter ad space, for
Right.
example, and have it listed next to my name, I can now start to create value. So he agreed to that.
Explain what bartering ad space is. Give them the short
Okay.
version on that.
You don't have to pay me $500. Just give me some space in your program.
Right.
You don't have to pay me anything.
So
I'll
he's
come up
now
for free.
delighted because
He's
it
got
doesn't-
extra space that he hasn't sold anyway, perhaps.
Yeah.
So I've just saved him $500. Now I've got this spot, right? So I was driving a Volkswagen at the time. I called it Volkswagen America, and I said, I'd like you to sponsor me. They basically laughed at me. This was totally ridiculous that they would do it, and so that didn't work. But then I thought, what if I call the Volkswagen dealer up in Connecticut, the local dealer?
Right.
Maybe they'd be interested. But I got to figure out first, what are they currently spending to advertise? So I called the local paper where they were advertising, and I asked the advertising department, I said, I'm interested in placing an ad. Could you send me your rate sheet? And what's your circulation? So now I know how many people are reading it. I know what their cost is. I knew what that Volkswagen dealership was paying
for
per
their-
person.
Right.
I know I've got 300,000 people here that are going to pick up this ad. I could beat that dramatically to what they
Right.
were paying. I mean, ridiculously. Put this all in a one-page proposal, send it to them. And my goal with all my one-page proposal is that the guy reading it has to feel like he would be an idiot not to take it to his boss.
Mm-hmm.
And let him take full credit. Hey, boss.
Right.
look what I
He's,
got.
he's a superstar.
Right, he's a superstar. So I want to make him a superstar.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening in that situation is instead of I don't have to accept the $500 that the festival offered me. I don't even have to settle for the $1,000 or $1,500 that I wanted,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll walk away with $5,000, and everybody wins. The festival didn't pay for it. The sponsor got a better deal than what he was paying
Yeah.
currently, and I made more money than I was even asking for in the first place.
Great.
And that's been my model all the time. Another good example is I was doing a show in Atlanta, and we had done something like we $5 to get in, but we'll waive the cover charge if you bring a canned good, and then we'll donate the canned goods to the local food bank. Well, what that did is it got me on Good Morning Atlanta, Fox 5 morning show to talk about what we were doing. So I called them Fox 5 up. I said, how many viewers do you have?
Right.
They said, well, we have 400,000 viewers. So I said, great. So I called up a guitar company. I said, I want to book a clinic next week. They said, it's ridiculous. We need 90 days to book a clinic. How much are you going to charge? I said, I'll charge you $1,000 to do a clinic, and nobody's going to come. Well, why would we do this? I said, well, because I'm going to go on Good Morning Atlanta, and the TV value is much greater than anybody coming to the clinic anyway. And they said, well, explain it to me. I said, all right, well, there's 400,000 people that watch it. Let's say only 10% see my segment, so that's 40,000. Let's say only 10% of them think about maybe buying a guitar, so that's 4,000. Let's say that 10% of them, 400, actually go into the store to buy it. And let's say that only 10% of them, 40, actually buy a guitar. I said, what's your profit margin on a guitar? They said about $100. I said, so that's $4,000. I'm charging you $1,000. Where else are you going to get a 400% return on your investment? I
love it.
Done. And you know what that led to? That led to about 75 clinics that year with that guitar company,
Wow.
which became a huge stream of income for me while on the road.
The last 5 minutes alone were worth watching the entire show for. So go back and watch those 5 minutes. Do you know, when I had the idea to start Taxi, the first thing I did was call every music magazine that I thought related to my target audience, which was not just musicians, but musicians who wrote songs and probably were recording them, even though home studios were kind of in their infancy. But I reached out to Recording Magazine, Electronic Musician, probably Musician Magazine, but I think I can't. They had the largest readership or subscribership, but I discounted them because there were a lot of fans. Anyway, I totaled up the paid subscribers, not the casual, I'm buying one issue at a newsstand, but the paid subscribers to all those magazines divided by the number of magazines. And then I subtracted out 20 or 30% for overlap, and that let me figure out how many potential Taxi members were out there. And I said, okay, if I can get 1% of that market,
Right.
just 1%, is there enough to sustain a business? And I did the same thing you did, which was call up the magazines. I got media kits, which tell you how much a half page costs, how much a full page costs. And
do your homework.
Yeah,
you know, that's what it is. It's doing your homework, and it's basic math. It
Yep.
really is, and it's presenting a mathematical argument, saying this is worth it, making somebody else look good,
Yeah.
and it works.
If you can make the numbers work at 1/10 of 1%, which when you went from 4,000 to 400,
Right,
to,
that's where
to
we
40,
were. We were at 0.01%.
Yeah. So if you can make
$100.
if you can make a profit for yourself at that percentage of people, don't think that 10% of the people are going to come to your show or 10% of the people are going to buy your CD. It's going to be somewhere between 0.1% and 1%. 1% is a home run. If you can make money doing that, you've got a business.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so you have to do some kind of business analysis. You have to know what percentage of your audience buys your merch.
Yeah.
You know, on an average basis, and then you can then figure out how much you need to charge to play, or how much you don't need to charge.
Because
if you
you're
can
gonna make
if you can incentivize the club in the same way and say, you know what, and this is a model that I use. You're only willing to pay me. I want 500. Well, you're only willing to pay me 300. I'll tell you what. Don't pay me anything, and invest that money into advertising, because I know I'm going to make
More
than
money on
that
the back end.
On the
from
back end.
Bigger crowd, more
Absolutely.
merch sales.
And a better show, more fun, everything.
Do you sell Ravi, the Raviator merch in the aviation industry as well?
Nope, I don't, and I've been thinking about putting together like a flight training package of existing material and things like that. The thing that I sell the most of in the aviation industry is my Learn Guitar in 21 Days DVD,
Because
half of them are
musicians, and half
musicians.
of those play guitar.
Right. So the idea of a structured Learn Guitar in 21 Days type of program, I sell more of that in the aviation industry, I think, than I do. Well, that's probably not true in the general industry, but certainly my direct sales are very heavily weighted on the aviation side. for that.
Let's talk about the difference between sponsorships and endorsements. And I
Mhm.
want to read an email. Robbie sent me this email a couple hours before he came here today. He got it from a taxi member.
Actually, what happened was I was at the Steve Wozniak interview at NAMM
this past week.
this past weekend,
Right.
and I was standing in the back by the coffee, which is what I always do because I'm going to meet the most people. I
Right.
stand by the coffee, right? So, and this girl comes up to me and says, "Are you Ravi, the Raviator?"
Yeah.
You know, I always feel like an action figure hero
Right.
when somebody says it. And I said, "Yeah." She said, "I saw you at Taxi a few years ago, and
I love it.
and it changed my life." I mean, literally, that's what she said. I mean, I felt so emotional.
Can I read the
Yeah,
email?
go for it.
So he said, "Wow, that's great. Could you send me an email that
Yeah.
kind of summarizes?" So she says, "The only time we ever attended Taxi, meaning the Road Rally, was in 2010. Attended one of Ravi's lectures on endorsements and sponsorships. He clarified so many points which people misinterpret. It's quite common to hear someone say, 'I'm endorsed by fill in the blank.' It should be stated, 'I endorse fill in the blank.' The artist endorses the company, not the contrary. He also emphasized to approach companies where you either like their products, use their products, or respect their products, and would like to use in the future, them in the future, I'm presuming. Do not do this just for free products. Come on, who's going to say I don't want free stuff? But keep listening. Don't do this for free products. It's unethical, which I know you and I. We share this. We're both big on integrity, and I know it sounds great to say that, but to actually live your life that way,
Yeah.
feels better. Nice to earn a living doing stuff with integrity. The company will feel your sincerity, so be honest. This is how great relationships are built.
Right.
He also discussed approaching companies for sponsorships for live performances in exchange for free company advertising. He has vast experience in this area, so we heeded his advice, which has changed our lives. Since then, Tracy, the wife in this couple, Tracy has 3 endorsement deals with major clarinet-related companies. Clarinets, mind you. Fabrice has 2 endorsement deals with major guitar and guitar-related companies, and we're working on some new ones. For the first time, we performed on Center Stage at NAMM in 2015 due to our relationships with these companies. The way we approach NAMM and other events of this type has been greatly influenced by Ravi. His experience is phenomenal. He's helped to change our lives, so we created our own genre of music, which is Gypsy Billy. Being around professionals like Ravi has definitely helped us to create our own way. Thank you so very much, Ravi. And that's from Tracy and Fabrice Vignati, also known as the Vignatis. So obviously they're not justifying, they're substantiating everything you've said. These are just average people that happen to be in the room, hear your lecture at the Road Rally, or be in your class, and they just did what you said.
You know, let's not say that they're average, and this is what's cool about Taxi. I think this is one of the
Okay.
reasons why I like being part of the Taxi Road Rally. They're just not average.
Right.
The fact that I come off looking great in this email is due to the fact that they implemented.
They
And
showed
they
up.
acted.
First thing
They
they had to
yeah.
do was show up.
But that they're a big part of their success.
Right.
Right? And there are plenty of people that will hear the same speech from me that won't get those results.
Yeah.
Because they're a big part of that.
Same thing is true with Taxi.
Yeah.
The people that watch Taxi TV,
Yeah.
that come to the Road Rally, that participate in the forums and actually try and integrate what the screeners tell them, inevitably are the largest percentage of our members that find success. And
Yes.
you see other people online trashing Taxi saying, "Oh, I belonged to Taxi for a year. I had 3 forwards and nothing ever happened." There's a difference.
Yeah. Well, something happened. They probably got some feedback, and whether they chose to heed it
Right.
and do something with it or not is ultimately their responsibility.
I beg people to come to the
Yeah.
Road Rally because it's such a wealth of, we've got 100 guys, not all like Ravi, they have different specialties,
but a lot
but
of them.
yeah, and there's just tremendous knowledge there. If you like watching a single episode of Taxi TV, imagine 12 hours a day of this kind of information
And
coming at you.
equally important, you have fellow members of this caliber
Yeah,
who are go-getters.
Right.
And that's an energy that we all like to be around.
absolutely. And you learn from them. We always say the best relationships are built in the registration line.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
go, "I can't believe the line is like, 1,000 feet long."
Yeah.
we do that by intent.
Yeah.
You know, we could add 5 more people at the computers and make the line go twice as fast, but we like people spending time in that line because inevitably they build relationships that turn into something
Yeah, and it's
before
almost,
they ever get the
that's
badge.
why it's also worth staying on site there, and you know,
Yeah.
it makes such a difference. I mean, it really does, because
Yeah.
those are the real relationships, the ones that happen in the elevator, the ones that happen in the line at the registration, and it's not just a taxi, but it's in any environment
Yeah.
where you have motivated, like-minded people.
Yep.
And that's the environment that you provide. There, you know, NAM for me is that environment as well. There
Yeah.
are other venues that provide that environment, but get yourself into that environment. Put yourself there, because that's the pathway to success.
Just thinking about the youth aspect of your aviation thing. Um, the greatest remote control helicopter pilot alive on the planet Earth right now is like a 13 or 14-year-old kid from Israel. And he gets flown all over the world with his dad to demonstrate his flying skills.
Wow.
And I just realized the reason they fly him and not some 40-year-old guy is because he represents a 40 or 50-year timeline of buying helicopters.
Yeah.
If you bring a kid in at 13, he's got a lot of years of buying gear ahead of him.
And from a business standpoint, it's funny you say this, because this is an argument. You know, the aviation industry is very fond of getting older pilots flying more.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying, can we invest that money in the youth, because you get a much longer return on your
Yeah.
investment.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Okay, so the difference between endorsement, sponsorship, and endorsement, and they kind of explained it in their letter, which is that you're endorsing their product, they're not endorsing you.
You know, it doesn't necessarily seem like an important point, but I think it is.
think it is.
I attended some seminars this week, not as a panelist, but just on endorsements, because I'm always curious what other people are saying. And half of the people in these companies get it backwards as well.
Wow.
They think they're endorsing artists. But I think it's very important for the artist to recognize that they're endorsing a product, and therefore they have a responsibility.
They're an ambassador.
They're an ambassador, and they have responsibility not only to the company, but to their fan base, of representing a product that they truly believe in. You know, I'm not going to go represent an alcohol product that doesn't relate to what I do or isn't of my interest. Not that there's anything wrong with it, and I just use that because I was approached by it. But that's not what I believe.
The Raviator, the drinking pilot.
Yeah, somehow it's not a good brand alliance.
Yeah.
But I always want to represent products that not only do I truly love, not only do I truly understand and utilize myself, but ones that I honestly believe serve my audiences better. They will their lives will be improved by this product in some capacity. Man, look, it's so weird. I just bought a new car. First time I've veered away from Volkswagen in a while, and I bought a Honda.
Okay.
And I just bought it. I was actually going to the Toyota dealer next door to buy a RAV4 because I figured I had to have one.
Yes.
But I didn't like the way it drove, so I didn't buy it. My wife and I fell in love with this beautiful little Honda SI sports car.
Okay.
And so we bought it. So I'm sitting there, and I'm doing my online registration and stuff, and all of a sudden, I'm starting to get emails about a Honda stage. Honda promotes concerts. They've supported Maroon 5. They're now doing more local acts. Much like the Budweiser concert series that used to go on. And so I'm looking. That's interesting. Honda is also just releasing their first jet.
Right.
So we've got Honda Jet.
Ooh.
We've got Honda
Ding, ding,
Music, and I'm a customer. I bought it with no intention other than I love the product.
Yeah.
That's the best. That's the best kind of relationship. And I just got an email from Honda Jet today. And we're working on building this relationship using the music angle, because Honda's as a brand is very focused on that. 50% of pilots play a musical instrument. I'm a customer.
Yeah.
So that's the best kind of endorsement you can possibly have. And it all works. It all makes sense.
And it's a little commuter jet. I'm pretty familiar with their jet. What's the Eclipse 500 or 550? I fell in love with years ago, being a guy who likes all things airplanes but doesn't fly one. They say that the future of aviation in America, at least, is going to be point to point versus hub and spoke on big commercial jets that guys like us who travel to go give a speech somewhere will be able to fly directly to Minot, North Dakota
Right.
on a little commuter jet for a
Right.
fraction of the cost
Yeah.
of getting on, United Jet and going to a hub and then a spoke. So I've seen pictures of the Honda Jet because they compare it to the Eclipse. It's the same size, I think, a four-seater.
Right.
It makes perfect sense.
It makes perfect sense. And the
You
lesson.
could be a guy. You could be a guy. They could actually give you access to a Honda Jet to do your speaking tour and play their stages.
I want to get my rating and fly it.
Yeah.
I mean, and seriously, that'll be the progression as I do doing a lot more in that industry. But the point and the value to the viewers is find that other thing that you're passionate about, because it really is that intersection that identifies your niche market, and in summing everything, so much of what we talked about, when you're looking at the global opportunity, or at least the national, something bigger than the local,
Mhm.
you have to better identify your niche. And if you can do that around your passions, then you become a much better ambassador. You become much more. You're very knowledgeable. So many good things come out of that.
What do they have to look for? Or now, let me rephrase that. How do they? Let's say they
Identify?
play a Martin guitar,
Hmm.
and they love their Martin, and they would never think about playing an Ovation or any other brand of acoustic guitar. They love their Martins. How do they approach Martin? What is going to make Martin pay attention to somebody who's a singer-songwriter and plays 2 nights a week at a local watering hole or coffee shop?
Martin is such a great brand. It's a company I work with closely.
Mhm.
Good friends there, and again, family brand with high integrity and iconic. Very difficult company to do a relationship with. For
Tell me, I've been trying to get them to the Road Rally
yeah,
for
I mean,
10 years.
It's they're not. That's just not what they do, for
Yeah.
lack of a better word. It's not part of their business model, really. My relationship with Martin started many years ago, because back in the late '90s, we had a lot of electric players starting to do singer-songwriter stuff, but they were all picking up Taylors because
Mhm.
Taylors played better compared to for an electric player.
Right.
Martins, in my opinion, sounded so much better,
Mhm.
but the action was higher, and that's where the sound comes from. That's why a Martin sounds so great. Where another company said, "Let's make a more playable." Taylor said, "Let's make a more playable guitar," and they would say that this isn't true, but I would say compromise the sound in exchange. I mean, Taylor's awesome. They're great guitars. So the last thing I want to do is knock them. They're phenomenal.
I've got to say, a year and a half ago, recorded something lickety split with a Taylor, just like a mid-level Taylor. It's amazing. Yeah.
Awesome guitars. But to my ears, I believe that the Martin is a better sounding guitar, and that's the company and the guitar that I wanted to play. But I actually could never really afford a Martin.
Yeah, the thousands.
Yeah, I didn't never really afford it. So I went to Martin and I said, "Look, I think I remember this conversation so well." As I said, "You think we have I said, "I think you're missing part of the market. And, you're not even seeing all the young people. They're not coming into Martin. They're going over to Taylor." And I remember the conversation was like, "You think we have a problem?" He said to me. I said, "No, but I think you got an opportunity."
Did you go to their office at Nazareth?
Yeah. I went to the
Okay.
factory and
Just getting in the door was.
well,
an
I think it was a phone
accomplishment.
conversation first, but I did have the Hanson background. Although the guy I was talking to at the time never heard of Hanson.
Hanson's
It was a
Rubber.
different, but I think as kids are. But the thing is that they recognize that there's something that says you got to find the gap in the market, and you got to find the market in the gap. It's that combination, and that's what I did with them. As I said, I think here's my bag, Hanson, young kids, again, youth focused. I can bring your brand to that new potential market.
Mhm.
That I think you're currently missing out on. And it was interesting, and part of when I think about that guitar, so we did an arrangement where they got me a very nice guitar to work with, and that guitar changed my life. It did. I had never done a solo acoustic show before, and when I got my Martin D42, gorgeous instrument, I sat down and I started playing my songs
Mhm.
with that. I loved the way it sounded. I started doing solo acoustic shows, which made my profit margin on the road significantly better.
Yeah.
It made it possible, frankly. I was losing money on the road with the band, but I could actually make money on the road solo. And that guitar not only changed the way I played, because it was the first time ever I stopped using a pick and
Mhm.
started,
Ooh.
it changed my style of playing. It changed my business approach to my touring because I love the way my songs sound on that guitar. No other acoustic guitar that I've ever picked up has done that for me. And it's that kind of commitment and endorsement
Hmm.
that I have close relationships with companies like Sennheiser and Martin and even Brian Moore Guitars, which they're not really made anymore on the custom shop level, but a variety of different companies like that, where these relationships have lasted for years because
I get it. Trust me, I get it.
because it's stuff that has changed my life. And I will say to the big audience out there,
Yes.
get a Martin guitar and listen to your music on it. That's, to me, doing all of them a service.
Yep.
Just even if you don't buy one, go into a store and play one of your songs on a high-end Martin.
Yeah. I'm sad to see that Martin's actually introduced a lower tier of guitars, and they did it because the
They had to
economy.
go for
Yeah. And they still sound great, but there's nothing like a $4,000 Martin or a $10,000 Martin. Oof.
At the NAMM they had a $100,000 Martin. I sat down and I played it,
Geez.
and it's I think it's probably the most expensive, that are available in multiples.
Yeah.
There's some signature models and things like that, but they made 10 of them, or 11 of them, and 10 of them sold. Wow, $100,000. Awesome though, gorgeous, and these are this is, I don't know. Just repeat it. Go out and hear your own music on a wonderful instrument. It makes such a difference.
One last thing I want to talk to you about, which is creating products, and we are going to give away a couple of products. Why don't you tell these folks what these are while I hold them up?
Okay, those are 2 DVDs that I released over the past few years by TrueFire. TrueFire is the largest online guitar instruction library, let's say. And Learn Guitar in 21 Days was actually the first one that I did again. How do you create? Psychologists say it takes 21 days to change a habit. So I wanted to change the habit of not playing a guitar to the habit of playing guitar.
Okay.
So it's really a beginner's course. But I think that there are a lot of songwriters out there that maybe are on piano or something
Mhm.
like that would also like to learn guitar in a short amount of time. You're not going to be clapping after 21 days. I'm not trying to deceive anybody. But, again, it's math. When you look at how songs are composed, how many chords do you need to know in order to play thousands of your favorite songs? If you're taught in a manner, and there's an online running list of what you know after day 2, what you can play after day 3.
I've
all
seen
of
it
that.
happen with my own daughter, Hannah,
Yeah.
the singer-songwriter daughter I was telling you about before. On a Tuesday morning, I was leaving for work, and she said, "Dad, what do I need to do to become a better songwriter?" And I said, "Hannah, you don't play an instrument. You're not a real songwriter until you can write a song on a guitar or a keyboard." By the time I got home from work that night, she'd learned 2 chords on my Strat from watching videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
By Friday of the same week, so Tuesday, Wednesday,
Yeah.
Thursday, Friday, in 3 days, she could play guitar as well as I can.
Yeah.
Which I'm not a great player, but she can write. She can play well enough to write songs.
Absolutely.
So I absolutely.
And
believe
even
what
on
you're saying.
YouTube, you can find a lot of segments of my courses. But what's cool is when it is outlined in a course, in a structure, 20 minutes a day for 21 days, and you could literally play thousands of songs. And as the whole goal is to give you enough so that you want to play more,
Right.
and become better. So that was the guitar course, and then 1, 2, 3 songwriting is the other course, which is my most recent release, and it's cool. We write songs together. We write 3 songs together. One starts with a lyric, another starts with a chord progression, and the other starts with like a cool riff.
Okay.
So what it really demonstrates is how to start with from a place, one of those 3 places, and
Mhm.
actually have a methodical, and there's a pilot's checklist.
Okay.
As you go through the process of completing your song.
Starting with a riff is a great idea because hooks have become so much important, and the definition of the word hook has changed so much.
Yeah.
Hook used to be the chorus.
Right.
Now,
Right
a
now
hook
it could be a riff. It
or
could
a
be,
riff in the intro.
Right.
If you don't hook me in the first 15 seconds of the song, I'm out of there.
Right.
Because our attention spans have gotten much shorter.
so I think it's I'm really proud of both of those courses.
So that leads me into the last topic I had on my sheet, which
Yep.
is talking about creating products. That's another income stream for musicians, which
Yes.
is the whole point that we're here for today. What could these guys possibly do? We've got probably the largest percentage of singer-songwriters, but we've got gigging musicians. We've got many of our members actually do teach guitar, teach piano. Many of them have home studios. What kind of products? How do they find what they're good enough at that somebody would be willing to pay for what they're going to teach?
Well, if it's an educational product, I mean, you have. Hey, first of all, anything you're going to put out there, it's got to be great.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it has to be. It's not just because you have your name on it, but because somebody is investing in whatever you're giving them. So, when it comes to merch, don't put out a cheap T-shirt, don't put out, those types of things. Honestly, I don't do a lot of merch though. I mean, I've done it. I've had T-shirts and I've had hats and things like that, and a lot of those are more marketing gimmicks and stuff that I give away more than
Right.
more than anything else, because frankly, I get more value out of it than they do. They don't need me to clothe them, most of them. But the things that I try to put out, the products that I try to put out, are products that add value to whoever's buying them. And so for me, a lot of that is an educational product, maybe a music marketing manual, or something to that effect. I think people have to find, again, the other things that they're very good at doing and that they have experience, and use the audience that you have as a potential customer base for that product. As in, my aviation speaking audiences are a great customer base for the 21 Day Guitar product. It's just not something you normally think of, but it's the type of thing that really works. The other thing too is, I think that, and this is maybe just a little bit off, but whenever dealing with a product, and whenever dealing with ourselves as artists, and our music as a product in and of itself, as well as the merch and all of that, I think that it's very important to also align yourself not only with another passion where you can cross market, but with some kind of philanthropic activity.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so important. I have a project in India building boarding schools for the poor, and we take them out of the village at the age of 4. We pay for their education through their master's degree, and we've had our first
Wow.
model school for 17 years. And so these graduates are now working at Goldman Sachs, Deloitte & Touche, American Express, amazing companies, while their families are still eating insects in many cases.
Why don't they support their families if they're working at Goldman Sachs?
Well, now, because we have that now, it's an interesting thing. It's not just about money; it's also about mentality. It's all we're dealing with extreme poverty.
Yeah.
Dealing with 500 million people at or below the poverty level, and these are the poorest in the world.
What was the great movie that exemplified that so well for the rest of us?
Slumdog Millionaire.
Yeah,
Exactly.
The first 5 minutes of that movie made
And it's
everybody
real.
on the planet who saw that.
And it's real.
It's that bad.
It exists. It's
Yeah.
that bad. So, music is a third of my life. Aviation is a third of my life, and this is a third of my life. And I believe that it is critically, and it didn't start. This is a big project, building 28 boarding schools, and the world's largest democracy halfway across the world. I don't expect everybody to start, necessarily doing that stuff. But I used to give, many years ago, guitar lessons every Tuesday night in a homeless shelter in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
That's something any of us can do, and we should do it. It not only is the right thing to do, but it's also a good business thing to do, because people want to talk about it. People want to align themselves with it. Companies want to align
They
themselves with
associate
it.
you with good things.
And
And it's got to come from a real place.
it's got to come from a real place. And if it comes from a real place, the best part of it all is it feeds you as an artist.
Yeah.
I mean, these kids in India, they feed everything that I do, just by how amazing they are, given an opportunity.
And you're talking about people eating insects. I'm thinking, a line of spiced insects. The Goldman Sachs guy, gets some investment.
They're already doing that in China.
Okay, there you
The
go.
rich people are eating it. They're eating the crickets.
Right, exactly.
But
Taco flavored crickets. Not
But-
to make fun of people eating insects.
No,
what I'm saying.
but the point is that we should all be thinking globally.
Yeah.
Because we have the technology, the ability. The world has become a smaller place because of that, and so we can actually serve the causes
Mhm.
that we care about, no matter where they are in the world. You couldn't do that 20 years ago easily,
Yeah.
but now you can in some capacity. And I just think it's so important. And people say to me all the time, oh, it's so amazing that you give back, and all that. You know what? It's not giving back. It's paying it forward. First
Yep.
of all, that's the key thing. And it's just something that I've always done. It's not something that I waited to do. It's something that I've always done. And part of any success that I've ever had is due to my approach with always making sure that I have a nonprofit component to a for-profit business.
My wife got a master's degree in fundraising for nonprofits. And so, and my former business partner who helped me start the company, who was my best friend from college, said to me as he handed me the cash to start the company, promise me that we will always do great things for people who need more, or have
Yeah.
a greater need than we do, even when we're not profitable.
Yeah.
So Taxi has long done a lot of behind the scenes stuff that I rarely talk about. And the one time I mentioned, um, my wife and I donate the money to buy breakfast for a bunch of kids in an orphanage in Cambodia.
Hmm.
And
That's
so
awesome. That's great.
every day their breakfast is on the Lasco family. And I mentioned this once on a Taxi
So
TV. I got so many emails from people saying, "How dare you spend our money on them? Why don't you lower the price?"
Wow.
And my response
Wow.
to that was, "It's not your money; it's my profit that I'm taking it from." But
Right. Wow. But
I-
that's the mentality, right? And so
Yeah,
hopefully our little conversation here too can help change that mentality,
Right.
because it really is. I do it as it's as much selfless as it is selfish. I get so much
Right, it
out
makes
of
you
it.
feel
know,
good.
it makes me feel good, and I also know that I sell more because of these things. So
Yeah.
it's a good business, and I always say
you don't give to get, but you do.
doing good
But
for
you get-
humanity is doing good for business. That's one of the things that I often say, and it really is.
I love the idea. Maybe it's not monetary, but I love the idea that you taught guitar in a homeless shelter.
Yeah.
No,
And I would go there every Tuesday night, and I would raise money to pay people to go there because I don't want them to depend on volunteers.
Right.
These kids have been abandoned already once in their life. The last thing that we could allow would be for one of their teachers that I'm providing
To not show
to not show up.
Yeah.
It would be tragic. The other thing too that was interesting in a place like Covenant House, which is where we did it.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
I've done some work with
Yeah,
Covenant
that's a
House.
great organization. And these kids, 16 to 21, went there voluntarily. So what that also meant, off the streets, they would go there voluntarily. What that also meant is that they could leave voluntarily.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time they left before they got the appropriate drug and alcohol counseling that they really needed to prevent them from coming back. Our little guitar program kept them there.
Right.
It kept them. It wasn't planned. I was just amazed when they said, "You know what? Our average length of stay has changed since you started the program."
That's great.
Any of us can do that.
I love
Call up your
Covenant
local
House.
Covenant House and start doing that.
Cara Diaguardi, big hit
Mhm,
songwriter, she had an idea to build studios. Her brother is the head of a drug rehab place that's a chain around the country, and so she had the idea of building a studio to keep people there longer.
Yeah.
And I worked with her on that project for several years, and she called me because she wanted me to introduce her to equipment manufacturers to get them to donate gear. I said, how about if my wife and I write a check and you write a check and we reach out, and we started this thing where every year another studio would be built in another
Yeah.
location. And it kept the kids in the program and they left with a skill.
Yeah, exactly. It really is. It really is great. And not all of us are able to do things financially to help these causes. But you know what? We can take a little bit of time.
Mhm.
That Covenant House thing cost me, 2 hours round trip from my house of my time once a week.
Mm-hmm.
The hardest part was also the most important part. No matter what, somebody's there.
Mm-hmm.
Got to be there. It's commitment. How many times
Right.
are we repeating the same?
Yeah, that's
the
where we
same
started the show today. It was on
yeah.
commitment.
So everybody can make that kind of commitment and do that, and everybody wins.
Well,
Benefits
I completely get it. And now I have another reason that I like you because we share that. I think the reason Taxi's been around now we're in our 24th year is because we quietly do that stuff behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, I'm glad to know that too. I didn't know that.
and we don't talk about it much, but we do it. Okay, we're going to give some stuff away to you guys. So, Ravi, if you would, take your finger, run it up and down the screen,
all
and
right.
wherever you land.
Oh, it's not a touchscreen?
No, it's not touchscreen. No, it's a computer, not an iPad.
Oh, I'm going over here? Or?
Left side.
Left side. Okay, so let's go.
Okay, Merry Band. Merry Band. Do you want to learn guitar in 21 days or 1, 2, 3 songwriting? You are the big winner. So I'm going to let you pick.
Merry Band. Merry Band.
Come on, Merry Band.
Merry Band, not a touchscreen. That's okay. Merry Band, you just won one of the videos, so let us know which one you want.
Oh, they're like 30 seconds behind us.
Ah, okay.
Merry Band. Wee. Okay, so she knows that she won. I think Merry Band is a lady. 1, 2, 3 songwriting. Okay.
All right.
Put a post-it note on that. So you need to email Sophia at taxi.com, and Sophia is Sophia F, like Frank, Sophia, Soffia at taxi.com, and give her your address, and she will send you this, the 1, 2, 3 songwriting. And now, let's do it for Learn Guitar in 21 Days. So all you keyboard players that want to learn guitar, go ahead and type in some +1s, and as soon as it starts scrolling, Robbie will put his hand up there and pick a winner for this one.
+1.
Yeah, it'll start flying in a second.
Ah, okay.
There you go.
So
just
just randomly pick one?
Yeah. Okay, tune up. Tune up 1. You need to email Sophia at taxi.com, and Sophia will send you Ravi's Learn Guitar in 21 Days. What is your website for people that want to track you and stalk you and hear you speak and watch you fly your plane?
Raviator.com. So it's just aviator with an R in front of it. Raviator.com.
This has been fun.
Yeah.
I really enjoy hanging out with you, and
10 years in the making.
yeah, and I'm sorry that I can't shake your hand and thank you, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. Yeah, I didn't even take any audience questions. I feel badly about that, but we've done an hour and 36 minutes, and I actually have to leave here in 9 minutes because I'm meeting my wife for a lecture and a film tonight. Sounds fun, huh?
Well, they can they can certainly email me through my website.
Okay,
I'd be
great.
happy to answer some questions.
Awesome idea. Thank you so much for watching, you guys. We will see you next week. I don't know what the show is going to be. 2 weeks from now, I am going to have a music attorney that specializes in music libraries and music library deals on the show. And we will let you know what's coming up next week on February 2nd. Robbie, thank you very much for
Thank you,
being
Michael.
here. Thank you, guys. See you soon for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. Bye-bye, guys.